The morning started the way most did in the quiet mountain town of Elk Ridge, sunlight pouring over the peaks, pine trees swaying in the breeze, and the soft sound of birdsong carried through the crisp Colorado air. Jack Miller leaned on the porch railing of his modest log cabin, steaming coffee in hand, watching his son Noah race around the yard barefoot with their dog, Buddy. The boy laughed, shrieking with joy as the shaggy Australian shepherd darted through the grass, herding him like a sheep. "All right, cowboy," Jack called out with a smile. "Don't wear him out before breakfast." He started it. Noah laughed, skidding to a stop, his blonde curls bouncing as Buddy tackled him to the ground in a pile of wagging fur and giggles. Inside, Emily was cooking pancakes, the smell of butter and syrup wafting out into the morning air. She called from the kitchen, "Noah, wash your hands before you touch anything." Life was peaceful here, simple, removed from the noise of the outside world. Elk Ridge had a population of just under 600, nestled deep in the Rockies, surrounded by forests, winding creeks, and views that stretched for miles. People here didn't lock their doors. They knew each other by name. But beauty can be deceiving. By noon, the wind picked up, not in a way that raised alarm, just enough to make Jack glance at the clouds rolling in over the mountains. Dark, heavy. He'd grown up here and knew the weather could turn quick. He looked back at the house. Emily was finishing dishes, humming to the radio. Noah was lying on the floor with Buddy, using the dog as a pillow while reading his favorite comic book. Everything was still, until the ground shook. It wasn't violent at first, just a rumble, barely enough to make the dishes tremble in their racks. Jack felt it before he heard it, an unnatural vibration beneath his feet, a low, rolling thunder that didn't belong in the sky. Then came the noise, a deep, roaring sound like a freight train crashing through the woods. Birds exploded into flight. The trees on the hill began to sway, then lean, then fall. "Emily! Noah!" Jack shouted, running toward the house. He didn't make it to the door. The hillside behind their home broke apart with terrifying force. Earth, trees, rock, thousands of tons of it, cascading down like liquid destruction. In a matter of seconds, everything was gone. When Jack came to, the sky was gray. He was lying face down in the dirt, coughing up dust, blood seeping from a gash above his eye. His ears rang. His leg wouldn't move. He blinked and tried to sit up, but pain shot through his body like fire. "Emily," he rasped. "Noah." There was nothing but silence. The cabin gone. The trees snapped like matchsticks. The road buried. The mountain had swallowed their lives whole. He tried to crawl, dragging himself toward where the house once stood. His fingers dug into the soil, pulling him inch by inch. He screamed their names into the dust-choked air, again and again, until his voice broke. Nothing answered, not even Buddy. By the next morning, the rescue crews began to arrive. First the Elk Ridge Volunteer Fire Department, then search and rescue teams from Boulder and Denver. Helicopters circled above, scanning the wreckage. Dogs were brought in to sniff for survivors. Excavators tore into the earth with urgency, yet caution. But it wasn't enough. Entire homes were buried under feet of debris. The landslide had cut a scar through the valley nearly a mile wide. Some residents had escaped. Many hadn't. Jack, bruised and broken, sat wrapped in a blanket, refusing to leave the site. He kept pointing at what was once their home, pleading with rescuers. "My son. He was inside. My wife too. And our dog. Please, you have to dig there." The responders listened. They tried. But time was the enemy. By the third day, they found Emily's body, buried near what was once the kitchen. They told Jack gently, placed a hand on his shoulder, said they were sorry. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stared at the earth. Noah was still missing. So was Buddy. Most of the national news had moved on by day 4. The initial headlines, "Colorado landslide destroys remote town, dozens feared dead in Elk Ridge disaster," were replaced by newer tragedies. But Jack stayed. The crews started pulling out. Rain was forecasted, and they warned it could destabilize the site even further. Search efforts would be suspended. Jack begged them not to give up. "You can't leave. He's out there. He has to be." One rescuer, a younger woman named Hannah, lingered behind as the rest packed up. She couldn't shake the image of Jack's face, desperate, drained, haunted. That afternoon, she wandered toward an area the main crew hadn't searched. It was near the base of the hill, where broken beams and tree roots poked from the soil like jagged bones. She paused. There was a feeling, something she couldn't explain. She crouched low and held her breath. Then she heard it. A sound, barely there, so faint she thought she imagined it. She tilted her head, waited. There it was again. A whimper. Hannah froze. She didn't breathe, didn't move. The sound had been so faint she thought it might have been the wind, until she heard it again. A soft, strained whimper. Low, weak, like it was coming from beneath her boots. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She dropped to her knees, pressing her ear to the cold earth. The smell of wet soil and pine needles filled her nose. She heard it again, closer this time. "Hello," she whispered. "Is anyone down there?" Nothing. Just silence. Then, another whimper. She scrambled for her radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need immediate assistance at Sector C, just past the split tree and rock face. I have possible live audio. Repeat, I hear something alive." A crackle, then, "Copy that, Unit 12. Team en route." She stood and started clearing loose debris with her hands, ignoring the dirt grinding into her palms. She didn't know who, or what, was down there. She only knew someone needed her, and she wasn't going to leave. Below the surface, buried beneath tons of shattered hillside, 8-year-old Noah Miller stirred. Everything hurt. His arms, his legs, his head most of all. It throbbed with a dull, nauseating pulse. He tried to move, but his right leg was pinned beneath something heavy. He couldn't see it, could barely see anything at all. Only a sliver of light filtered in from a crack above, glowing just enough to show broken floorboards, dirt, and what looked like a chair leg. He was in some kind of space, a pocket, maybe. Air was thin, but he could breathe. Sort of. He coughed weakly. "Mom." No answer. Then a sound. Beside him, pressed against his chest like a furry, living blanket, Buddy stirred. The dog lifted his head, gave a small, miserable whimper, and licked Noah's face. "You're okay," Noah whispered. "You stayed." Buddy wagged his tail once, then curled tighter against the boy, as if to say, "I'm not going anywhere." Noah didn't know how long it had been. It felt like forever. Sometimes he fell asleep. Sometimes he woke up to pitch black. Buddy was always there, never leaving his side, occasionally shifting to keep the boy warm. He hadn't barked, as if he knew making too much noise might bring the wrong kind of attention, or collapse the fragile air pocket that was saving their lives. But now Buddy was whimpering. Noah looked up, squinting. The light was brighter than before. Was someone? Above ground, Jack had limped across the disaster site as fast as his injuries would allow. The radio chatter said someone heard something. He didn't wait. By the time he reached the spot, a small team was already digging. Carefully, slowly, like every shovel of dirt could decide whether someone lived or died. Hannah met his eyes. "It's faint, but it's there. I swear it." Jack dropped to his knees. "That's where our cabin ended. That's Noah's room. Right there." She nodded. "Then we dig." More hands joined. Rescuers, volunteers, even neighbors with bruised arms and wrapped ribs. No one said a word. They just moved, ripping boards free, handing buckets down a line, wiping sweat from their brows even as the wind picked up and the sky threatened rain. Hannah leaned close to the soil and called softly, "Buddy? Are you there, boy?" Silence. Then, a muffled bark. Jack's heart stopped. "That's him," he gasped. "That's Buddy." Another bark. Then a faint, trembling voice. "D-Dad." Noah blinked at the sudden flood of light. Dust swirled in the air as a gap above widened. A flashlight beam pierced through, then another. Shapes moved beyond it, shouting, calling his name. Buddy stood up and barked again, louder now, tail wagging furiously. He pawed at the dirt, as if trying to dig his own way out. "Noah!" A voice cried out, his father's voice. Tears welled in the boy's eyes. "I'm here," he yelled, his voice cracking. "I'm here, Dad." Then a hand broke through the dirt and reached in. Another, and another. It took nearly 2 hours to fully uncover them. Noah was lifted carefully from the hole, wrapped in a thick blanket, and passed gently into the arms of a medic. His face was pale, lips chapped, and he hadn't stood in days, but he was alive. Buddy was pulled out next, covered in dirt and trembling with fatigue, but otherwise unharmed. The crowd gasped, then erupted into applause and sobs. Jack dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around them both. His son, his dog, alive. I told you, he choked out. I told you he wasn't gone. Noah buried his face in his father's chest. Buddy saved me, Dad. He wouldn't leave. Not once. Later, in the warmth of a hospital room, Noah recounted the whole story. The moment the landslide hit, Buddy had tackled him to the floor, shielding him from falling debris. Somehow, the space they landed in didn't collapse. For days, Buddy kept Noah warm, nudged him to stay awake, and even licked condensation from the walls to keep them hydrated. Doctors said it was a miracle either of them survived. But Jack knew it wasn't just luck. It was loyalty. It was love. It was Buddy. The town of Elk Ridge had never seen so many camera crews. In the days that followed Noah's miraculous rescue, word spread fast. Local news stations were first, then regional outlets. Then, Good Morning America, CNN, The Today Show. Everyone wanted to know, how did a little boy survive 4 days under a mountain of rubble? The answer, they discovered, wasn't just luck. It had 4 legs, a dirt-matted coat, and one of the biggest hearts the world had ever seen. Buddy. In a recovery tent just outside the edge of the landslide zone, Jack sat beside Noah's cot. The boy had barely let Buddy out of his sight. Even now, the dog lay curled next to him, resting his head on Noah's small hands. A nurse smiled softly as she walked by. They're like glue. Jack nodded. They always have been. Buddy's been with him since he was in diapers. He used to sleep under Noah's crib at night. We thought it was just cute. Turns out, he was training to save his life. The nurse's smile faded just slightly. I'm so sorry about your wife. Emily was, well, she always treated us nurses like family when she came in. Always asked how our kids were doing. Jack didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, quietly, she would have loved to see this. Noah's safe. Buddy okay. The whole town coming together like this. His voice cracked, but he didn't look away. She was the kind of person who'd find light in the worst storm, he added. And somehow, she left a little of it behind. A few days later, the town gathered on the high school football field, one of the few places untouched by the landslide. Folding chairs were lined up in neat rows, though most people stood. The American flag flew at half-staff. Wind rustled through the trees as the names of those lost were read aloud, one by one. When they reached Emily Miller, a hush fell over the crowd. Jack and Noah sat in the front row, holding hands. Buddy sat at their feet, wearing a simple red vest that said "Rescue Dog" across the back. After a moment of silence, the mayor stepped up to the mic. We come together today not just in grief, but in awe. In the darkest moment this town has ever faced, we found something we thought we'd lost: hope. She turned to Noah and smiled warmly. And sometimes, that hope shows up in the form of a muddy, shaggy miracle with 4 paws and the courage of a lion. Laughter and sniffles rippled through the crowd. In honor of Buddy's bravery, we are presenting him with Elk Ridge's first ever Medal of Valor, awarded not to a person, but to a soul who acted with more loyalty and heart than most humans ever do. As she reached down and clipped the medal onto Buddy's vest, the entire field rose in applause. Noah beamed. Jack cried quietly into his sleeve. And Buddy just looked up at Noah like he always had, as if nothing else in the world mattered but the boy he loved. Later that week, the Miller house was still gone, reduced to twisted beams and memories buried under rock, but a community fundraiser had already raised enough money to rebuild. Volunteers offered labor. Businesses donated supplies. A local construction team had already broken ground on a temporary cabin. In the meantime, Jack and Noah stayed with neighbors just outside town. Every morning, Noah walked down the dirt road with Buddy, now a celebrity in his own right. People would stop them to shake Noah's hand, to pet Buddy, to bring by treats, toys, and thank you cards. But not every day was easy. Noah had nightmares. Sometimes he'd wake up sobbing, clutching his pillow, calling out for his mom. Jack would hold him until he fell back asleep. Sometimes, Buddy would climb right into the bed, pressing his body against the boy like a furry wall between him and the dark. One afternoon, about a week after the memorial, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled into town. A producer from a national morning show stepped out, sunglasses tucked into her hair. She approached Jack at the church parking lot. "We'd love to fly you and Noah out to New York," she said. "People across the country want to meet the boy and the dog who survived the impossible." Jack hesitated. "I appreciate that," he said slowly. "But we've got a lot of rebuilding to do here." She nodded, sensing his discomfort. "Understood. But just so you know, we'd also like to set up a scholarship fund for Noah and a national fundraiser for Elk Ridge." Jack looked down, jaw tight. He hadn't expected that. "Okay," he said, "but only if Buddy gets to ride in the cabin." 2 weeks later, the trio stepped off a plane at JFK International Airport. Buddy wore a fresh red harness and a blue service dog badge. Noah wore a suit jacket 2 sizes too big, clutching a little stuffed version of Buddy someone had given him on the plane. Jack wore a suit that Emily had bought him years ago, back when they were still dreaming of traveling together. On set, the hosts leaned in close. Tears streamed down the anchor's cheeks as Noah quietly explained how Buddy had kept him alive, licking the moisture off rocks, keeping him warm, and barking only when it mattered. They showed drone footage of the landslide, images of Buddy being pulled from the rubble, the moment Noah saw sunlight for the first time in 4 days. When Jack spoke, his voice shook. "I don't know what we did to deserve that dog," he said. "But I know this. Without him, my son wouldn't be here today. And that makes him family." The host turned to Noah. "What do you think, Noah? Is Buddy a hero?" Noah smiled shyly and scratched behind Buddy's ears. "He was always my hero," he said. "Now everyone else just knows it too." Winter came early to Elk Ridge that year. Snow blanketed the mountains with quiet grace, as if trying to soothe the scar carved by the landslide months before. But beneath the white, something new was rising, a slow, stubborn bloom of life. The town was rebuilding, not just homes and roads, but trust, spirit, connection. And at the heart of that healing was one boy, his dog, and the memory of the woman they'd lost. The new Miller home stood just a few hundred feet from where the old one had been, on slightly higher ground now, reinforced with retaining walls and steel foundations. It wasn't grand. Just 3 bedrooms, a porch swing, and smoke curling from a stone chimney. But it was safe, and it was theirs. Inside, Jack leaned over the kitchen table, sorting through utility bills and volunteer thank-you cards. The hum of the heater filled the room, along with the muffled sound of Buddy's paws thumping across the wooden floor. In the living room, Noah sat cross-legged in front of the fireplace, using marshmallows and toothpicks to build something between a castle and a spaceship. Buddy watched, tail flicking lazily, his muzzle now flecked with a bit more gray. Jack looked over from the table. "You guys working on your next architectural masterpiece?" Noah grinned. "It's a marshmallow shelter. You know, in case there's another landslide." Jack's heart tightened, but he smiled. Smart thinking. He walked over and ruffled the boy's hair, then knelt and placed a gentle hand on Buddy's head. The dog looked up, his eyes still full of that same old fire, the same eyes that had watched over Noah for 4 unthinkable days beneath the earth. Buddy had changed since then. He moved slower, slept more. Crowds exhausted him now, but in the quiet of home, he was still the same protector, still the guardian, still the miracle. In early December, the town unveiled a new addition to the Elk Ridge Community Park. Just past the swing sets and the duck pond, nestled near the trailhead where the forest opened wide, stood a bronze statue, about 3 feet tall. It was Buddy, lifelike and alert, nose lifted to the wind, with a child's hand resting on his back. The plaque read, "In honor of Buddy, the dog who waited, protected, and never gave up. He didn't just save a boy. He reminded us of everything good in the world." The entire town showed up that day. There were families, teachers, rescue volunteers, and even the governor's office sent a representative. But the loudest applause came when Noah stepped forward in his little blazer and read the speech he'd practiced 100 times. Buddy didn't bark a lot. He didn't ask for anything. He just stayed. Even when he was scared. Even when it was dark. He stayed. And I think that's what heroes do. They stay when no one else can. He looked down at Buddy, sitting proudly beside him. I love you, boy. Buddy wagged his tail once, and the entire crowd melted. That winter was quiet. Peaceful. Jack went back to working part-time at the local ranger station. Noah started school again, still a bit shy, but more confident than ever. Teachers said he had a new kind of strength in him now, a steadiness that seemed older than his years. Buddy became something of a town ambassador. He was always welcome at the library, the diner, even the post office where he'd learned to nudge the door open on his own. Kids stopped to pet him. Strangers left treats on the porch. He didn't seem to care about the fame, just about being close to Noah. But the truth was, time had its say, and everyone in town knew it. One soft spring morning, nearly a year after the landslide, Jack found Buddy curled up at the foot of Noah's bed. His breathing was slow, peaceful, his eyes half closed, his body still. Jack sat beside him and whispered, "You don't have to fight anymore, old friend. You already did more than anyone could ask for." Noah woke to Jack's gentle arms wrapped around him. He looked at Buddy. He understood immediately. He didn't cry right away. Instead, he laid his head on Buddy's side and whispered the same thing he'd whispered underground when the world was falling apart. You stayed. The entire town came to Buddy's farewell. He was buried beneath a tree in the park, just 10 feet from his statue. A small headstone marked the spot, surrounded by flowers, tennis balls, and letters written in crayon. Noah left his favorite drawing, Buddy, wearing a cape, flying above the mountains. People said they'd never forget him, that they'd never seen a town pulled back from the edge by a single act of love. Years passed. Noah grew. Jack remarried. A teacher named Rachel who had the same laugh Emily used to. The new house filled with new memories. Buddy's photos still hung in the hallway. His collar still rested on Noah's nightstand. And one day, on a cool fall afternoon, a boy a few years younger than Noah once ran laughing through the backyard, chasing a clumsy golden puppy across the grass. From the porch, Noah, now taller, now with deeper eyes, smiled. The past never really left. But it didn't hurt the way it used to. Not anymore. Because love like Buddy's doesn't disappear. It lives on, in the boy he saved, the town he healed, and the hearts he touched. One faint whimper at a time.
Dogs truly are the most loyal companions in our lives. What did you think of this heartwarming story? Let us know in the comments. Like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for daily emotional dog stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Click here to watch the next story of love, loyalty, and the incredible bond we share with our paw-some friends.